And welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. While the U.S. Capitol was under attack 1 year ago tomorrow, members of Congress were at work counting the electoral vote. One member of Congress is from Houston, and we're talking about Congressman Al Green. We had a chance to sit down with him today to figure out what that experience was exactly like for him. And joining us this evening on The Factor Uncensored is Congressman Al Green, talking about the anniversary of the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Congressman Green, reflecting on a year ago, can you even imagine that that would have happened before it did in this country with people who just didn't agree with an election and were told? They were told that this election was stolen, didn't have any solid evidence whatsoever. Are you still shocked at that behavior?
I was thunderstruck. I was in my office when it occurred, and it was very difficult to believe that people were actually scaling the walls of the Capitol of the United States of America. Very difficult to believe. And that they had these rebel flags, gallows, talking about hanging the Vice President of the United States. It was unbelievable. And to know that they were looking for Speaker Pelosi, just something that you would not think would happen. But when I talk to people out in my neighborhood, let me tell you what they say. They say to me that if those had been people of color, there would have been a different reaction. And they say to me that if these people were being tried, that someone, if they were of color, would have been tried for an insurrection. So far, no one has been tried for producing, inciting an insurrection. So there's a belief that this is rooted in race to a certain extent, and that was what motivated this to a certain extent. And to a great extent, I think that we cannot escape the fact that we have not reconciled in this country. And we do need a Department of Reconciliation, something that I've called for in a resolution. And it would have a Secretary of Reconciliation so that we can get on with the business of reconciliation as it relates to the races in this country.
And Congressman, what we had there in Washington, D.C. back on January 6th a year ago was a lack of preparation, a lack of concern for these people who were coming to Washington, D.C. There were alerts, there were warnings, messages were not passed on from the FBI or to the U.S. Capitol Police. They just weren't prepared and didn't see them as a significant threat. And that goes back to what you were saying. If those were African Americans, they would be prepared in riot gear.
Yes, the belief is that somehow African Americans are a greater threat. And that's very unfortunate because the evidence of African Americans being a greater threat just is not there. Sure, there are persons who commit crimes, but when it comes to this kind of behavior, this is not something that African Americans, generally speaking, have been charged with, not marching on the Capitol of the United States, an insurrection. So my hope is that the investigation will give people reason to understand that there must be someone charged with insurrection. Because if we don't, and we continue to say it was an insurrection, then we don't get the justice that the country deserves.
Congressman, what was it like back on that day knowing that there were people outside of the U.S. Capitol, outside of that building, who would have harmed you if they could get to you specifically? What is it like knowing that there's a mob of people who would harm me if they could put their hands on me and get to me?
Well, we received a call indicating that we should turn our phones off in our office. They were not only outside, they got inside the building, and we turned off our phones. We were very quiet. We were concerned that someone might come over and try to get into our office. There were other offices, as you know, that were breached, the Speaker's office. Persons got onto the actual floor of the Senate. So yes, there was a lot of concern, and my staff, for days after that, they were concerned about coming back to work. And after we left the Capitol that night, after we had the certification of the election. The good news is that democracy prevailed. But after we left and I took the flight home, there were people on the flight who were announcing that Mr. Impeachment is on the flight. I had to have police officers escort me from one flight to the next because I had a layover. And I had to have officers stay with me during that layover. So it's been quite a challenge for not only me, but for many others too. The Honorable Maxine Waters has had many challenges. That was a day that we won't ever forget and we can never allow to occur again.
And of course, I still get chills just looking at that video of the U.S. Capitol 1 year ago. It's just mind-blowing that we were in America, that the U.S. Capitol was under attack like that. We want to thank you for joining us on this special edition of The Factor Uncensored. And we want to tell you that we invited several members of Congress, Republican members, but for some strange reason, they want to do all their interviews tomorrow on the actual anniversary, and we completely understand that. In fact, we will have Republican Congressman Troy Nehls on the Fox 26 Morning News at 9 a.m. And of course, you remember he was actively involved in barricading the doors in Congress when the insurrectionists were trying to get in.